Founding director of the Rick based at Claremont College and serving all 5 Claremont colleges. It's known as the Hive. It's got a really great jacket that has on it. Provides a place for students to be creative, to challenge themselves, to together address a really amazing range of social and other challenges that they have done design projects around there. He spent 25 years before that at Fidelity Investments, where he really grew and practiced around design, and also spent time at the D School, where he taught awesome classes like designing with data, designing for the law, and Project Joy. And I've been lucky to spend a little time with Fred at both Fidelity and the Hive, and I've just been amazed in so many design environments I've been in. I think that his have probably been the most human, inviting, permissive, joyful. There's signs all over the Hive that say, yes, you can. I think he's going to show that. So that says volumes about him and his passions. Ask him about curling and traveling with his family. Take it away.
Thanks, Ella. That's really nice. We've got people online, and we're all here. So I'm going to show a lot of pictures and talk more than I normally do, but hopefully we'll make this fun and interactive. You guys will stop me if something doesn't make sense or whatever. Jasmine's not here yet, but I do want to call out, she gave me the title for my talk, and I'm not going to apologize. It's who am I, and why have I been called to this work? Right? So that's I'm going to unapologetically sort of answer that question.
That's why I'm here.
Along the way. Hi, everybody. But one way to demonstrate who I am and why I've been called to this work is I'm going to ask everybody to do me a favor. Everybody has these wonderful, lovely name tags. Can you take a pen and write your name on the back side? It's easier, 50% probability you'll know your name. So I'm a designer and I love fixing things. Just write your name on the back, and that way when it swings this way, we'll still know your name. I'm going to cross that. First, we're going to cross the border of the 2 sides of your name tag. People are coming in. I mean, if you don't want to, you don't have to, but you can always erase it. All right, awesome. Prompt 2. Can you take a sticky note and draw a shape? Whatever shape, but a contiguous shape. And people online, take a piece of paper and draw a shape. Okay, put yourself in the middle of that shape. Your name, or your face, or whatever. Put yourself in the middle of that shape. Now, around the outside of that shape, the thing you do are borders. What are the borders? What are the things you border? Places, emotions, people. What's outside of your border, your normal life, your border? Just write some words. Places, or draw an image, the things that are outside of your sphere. Folks online, yeah, just draw that picture and write the things that are outside of where you sit. And now turn to a partner. Maybe it's ideally somebody you didn't talk to yesterday. Turn to a partner and let's just share for a moment what your borders are with your partner.
Yeah, we can talk. I'm an external processor.
Folks in the chat can put some borders, some words into the chat. Folks online.
Understood, yeah. Yeah. I love it. I really I'm feeling the same thoughts. like the line is moving clearly, and then the other side you're like, this is a downward spiral. Everything's ending. This is terrible. What are we even doing here? Right? This is so bad. I also
All right. Sorry to bring you back. Come back to this. Can somebody call out either a border that their partner has or one that they had that maybe you want to cross? Border that's on your page, and maybe one that you want to cross that border, or thoughts on it, or a border you learned about from your partner.
We were talking about cat versus dog, all that more social justice type thing, and I feel like I am constantly walking that border between peace in my marriage, but also, so that we both greater understanding on both sides, I think. And
Yeah, that's important. All right. Well, thanks everybody. So I'm going to talk about also credit to Jasmine, but actually it was already in my slide. I figured if I'm going to tell a story about myself, it should be a play. So it's a 3-act play. Start with Act 1, which may not, it may take, I'm going to go quickly here. It may not make sense at first, but hopefully it'll all pull together. So 1995, I was working at Fidelity Investments in a technology group, and this thing called the World Wide Web was becoming popular. And we were like, we should put stuff up. People should be able to look at what their account balances are online. And people thought, well, maybe we should even let them transact. And some people said nobody will ever trust their computer to transact money. But we're like, no, let's try to do it. And we had some early prototypes. So this is the first prototype of Fidelity.com that I drew on folders that I pulled out of my desk. And said, there's a metaphor that makes sense to me about how people store stuff. And we shared this with a bunch of people and shared it with our phone reps who talked over the phone. And created this organization structure, account and trade, news and quotes, research, planning, customer service. Yeah, I just sort of sketched the thing out as it would be. This is before this other company called Amazon had started or another company called Google had started. So we were looking at a lot of examples. I show some of these pictures to my students. None of them were born, and so some of you were born, yeah. And so then in 1997, this is actually 98, we launched our first website, right? So we were like, worked with somebody named Claremont McKenna, who you may have heard of as a famous designer, to do the graphical design and implemented this structure. And suddenly people could see their things and they could transact. And for this year, this was pretty remarkable, right? That people could have access to these tools that previously you had to like pay a broker to see data and see information. So we were crossing this border of people democratizing this information and giving people access to it. What happened between 96 and about 2005 is we went from 1% of transactions being online to 96%. So I was in the right place at the right time, and our design was working pretty well. And that doesn't even really give the picture because it was 10x the transactions that were online. So when we started the project, Fidelity had 3,000 phone reps who were picking up the phone and basically answering questions like, can you give me the price on IBM? Or can you give me the price on General Motors? So in 2013, how many phone reps do you think we had? 0? Oh, wait, this is another guessing game like Camille did yesterday. Yeah. 3,000 to 0. Any other guesses? 2? Well, we had 6,000 phone reps. So we went from 3,000 to 6,000. I thought this was supposed to save money. Well, actually, there's a reason for that. It wasn't a bad thing. First of all, we were 10x the volume. And also, we changed the conversations, right? So the conversations weren't, can you give me the price on IBM? 104, click. They were, do I have enough money to retire? Oh, let's come and talk. And so, how am I going to put my kids through college? I don't understand how the retirement plan at my company works. So we were able to intentionally change that dialogue, and never was the intent of the website to replace the people and automate the business, but was to change and personalize it more. But we were still having this bit of a problem that the website, people were just sort of click and go, right? Click and go, see something, find out, yes, I have, and you still, drives me crazy. Every morning, National Public Radio, wherever, like they say, they wake you up and say, the Dow's up 200 points. Okay, so or the Dow's down 112 points. So what does that mean? Like it's just today. Why? So people are sort of micro-focused on today, yesterday, as their finances. So we started talking about how to engage people more. A lot of folks here have probably been to the Stanford D School. It doesn't look like this anymore. This is this was in 2005, 10 years after we had done that first design. And they were just launching the D School in a double wide trailer on the side of the Stanford. I spent a lot of time on the road visiting other companies and trying to learn from people. And one of them was this trip to the D School. And they were like, hey, we're looking for a project sponsor. Would you guys sponsor a class? So we did. So Fidelity sponsored a class, which was the savings project. And we asked the students, this is again in that double wide trailer. There's some, I won't name names, but there's some really interesting.
Hello.
Gone on to do some amazing, interesting things. But what the students came back to us with was, first of all, it was my first introduction. I was like this self-trained designer who had created this website on folders on my desk. But they introduced me into design thinking and to being more human-centered and understanding things. And one of the teams came back to us with this insight that stuck with all of us, which is that for kids, physical feedback and fun are an important part of saving, right? And that wasn't a thing that we were representing well with the website, that there wasn't really fun or something tangible. And they reminded all of us, or those of us my age, about what that was like. And suddenly I'm like, oh, I remember going to the bank in Morrisville, Vermont when I had a summer job. I'm seeing some nods. And I remember the taste, the smell, the sound, the woman behind the counter. Yes, it was a woman, but who would punch the little thing and you could hear the typewriter clickety clack. And I'm like, I know where that is. I know where that passbook is. And I went back and I found my passbook savings bank in a drawer in the house in Vermont. And I'm like, yes. And it was like, it's pretty incredible. So, date myself entirely, but this is the summer of 1978. And I worked as a waiter, a busboy and a waiter in a restaurant. And I got up to $877 of savings and pulled $800 out to go back to college for beer. So, but it was this tangible, visceral thing, right? So we went back, and I won't show you all the slides. We designed a part of our website that looked like my Union Savings Bank passbook, right? It had that, and enhanced that, but had that same sort of tactile touch and sense and emotion. And again, it's not an emotional space, but it is an emotional space, right? And that's one of the things that I learned. Money is it's not quite health, but it's a big part of it, and it's a thing people don't talk about in their families, right? So I'll see that. So that was another big insight. Like kids talk about it, they have this visceral sense, but at a certain age, it's a thing you cease talking about and connecting on. So that led us to this is going to brush. I'm going to brush by themes of this conference. You can call them out, but intergenerational conversations and how they happened. And so our intergenerational conversations started at Stanford. I kicked off a project with the D School, the Stanford Center on Longevity, and Fidelity to understand what's going on, why aren't people talking, and what are going on. And we were looking at data that the Stanford Center on Longevity was publishing. Good news, right? We're all living longer, but also causes some issues, right? We're not necessarily living longer as healthy people, or eventually time catches up with us. And people don't talk about their estate plans, and they don't plan them out, and they don't communicate with people. So we began to try to figure out what happens in these conversations. So Sandy's not here either, but I was thinking about the posture of listening and how that happens, and starting to look at when you see that and when you don't see that. So this is a picture of my mother and my daughter, right? But what's going on in this picture? Anybody? Yeah, they're not, but they might have been. But they're not looking at each other, right? There's concern. It's sort of like and they have a wonderful relationship, but right, it's like there's just sort of like concern and fear and regret, and there's a lot of things that they're not talking about. Actually, that's what this is really about. Is they're not talking about money. They're not talking about things. They're just kind of talking a little past each other, right? And so started to try to figure out why does that happen, and why does that happen in our conversations, and interviewed more people and talked about what they talk about. And then started to have, this is a great picture of posture of listening. This is at the D School where we had graduate students like organized to ask the questions, right? And so when you are organized, and this is why some of these just little simple prompts we do as designers work so well. You ask people to ask a question, they do it, and then they start to get answers, and they're like, wow, that's amazing. But if you ask them just to talk, it doesn't always happen. This is a project from some of the research we're doing. You may recognize, some of you know Asha Shrikantaya, who worked with me at Fidelity, and now I'm fortunate to have worked with me at the Hive. We were doing research into this study about estate planning and interviewing, in this case, interviewing a couple in their home with their baby and showing them a prototype and asking them about their child's future and what they were doing. And then this happened. The baby was more, yeah, the baby's more interested in the prototype. Prototype was a throwaway. But look what's going on between the couple below the screen sharing. Suddenly, because we showed them this thing, this has triggered like a conversation, right? She's saying something to the effect of, no, your brother will not be the guardian for our child. And they're like having this conversation, right? And these are hard conversations, and they don't happen very often. So people don't cross that line. There are implicit lines. So I don't know, we did a lot of this work in the family conversation, and it turns out everyone has a story. This would be another great prompt that could have you guys start talking about the communications in your family, the communications across not just money, but across like tough subjects, and what helps them happen, and how you get people to do it. Everyone has a story, and everyone wants to talk about how hard it is to talk. Does anybody have a story here about how hard it is to talk? Yes. I won't stop you. So this launched like a section of our offering. It's not even that this is a good web page or anything, but it launched a section of our offering around family conversations, which is like, this is a really like, these things don't line up. This is not a good organized. As an information architect, investment strategy, retirement planning, income protection, asset protection, family conversations. Like what shelf does that go on in the store? Or what category is it? But it was an important part. It also led to some work that Fidelity continued, and Asha drove a lot of that around student debt and student loans, which turned out to be the really important piece of the business. We had been bringing people into the workforce, and Fidelity offers the retirement plans for many of the big companies, profit and nonprofit, in the country, and very effective at asset management and getting people to save, whether you believe in the U.S. retirement system or not. But 22-year-olds who are carrying around like $100,000 in student debt, and you start talking to them about saving money for retirement, it really doesn't connect. And so Fidelity has now launched a program that came out of some of this work that employers are offering before retirement savings. They're offering to match repayment of student debt as an incentive to keep employees, to help them be healthier financially, and then ultimately lead to them to patterns of saving. Okay, just about the end of chapter 1. There's a little footnote other than the screen share. So this is a picture of Fidelity.com last week. Well, you're gonna have to trust me. And notice the tab structure, even though we have screen sharing up there. Let me move this thing. Oh well. Yeah, let me make the next slide. Sorry. Okay, so the top tabs: accounts and trade, planning, advice, news and research, and hit next. And there's my design, 25 years later. So that's not exact, right? We have accounts and trade, that's a one-for-one. News, quotes, research, it's now just news and research. Planning and education, that's not really on there. Products, yes. Customer service up on the top, and another thing called Life Fidelity. So that either means it's hard to change things, or we had a really good design, or both. Okay, Act 2. I'm gonna run behind it, but I'll go fast. So from there, I spent time at Stanford. One day I'm at my desk at Fidelity in January of 2016. So I'm like 25 years into this really fun thing that I've been doing. And I got a call that the Claremont Colleges are starting a Center for Creativity. And did I know anybody who might be interested in being the founding director? Like, pretty much out of the blue. I'm like, I might. I need to go home and talk to my wife, but I might. So I landed there. Long story short, yes, I was interested, and they were interested in somebody who was not coming out of an academic background. I have a BA in math, and that's my highest degree. But I've done all of this design work, and I was given an appointment as a clinical professor of engineering at Harvey Mudd College, which is pretty cool that I'm a professor of engineering at a really well-renowned engineering college. But that's not what I was there to do. These are pictures of students in my human-centered design class. We teach human-centered design. I'll show you some pictures. Early on in the class, we do this exercise where everybody gets a jigsaw puzzle, an identical jigsaw puzzle, like a pretty easy one. It's a picture of dogs on a fire truck. And we say, okay, first team to get the jigsaw puzzle wins a box of Girl Scout cookies. They don't hesitate for a minute. They're ready to go. And then before they're done, we take them and bring them into another room and say, okay, new challenge, make a quilt. And they are kicking and screaming when you take them away from the jigsaw puzzle unfinished. It's not done. What do you mean? I didn't get into this college by not finishing my work. But so then we say make a quilt. And this is what happens, right? Like, there's a lot of ambiguity here. There's a lot of like, I don't know what to do. And eventually it turns into this situation. And people are digging in and having fun and working together. And sometimes it turns into a situation like this, right? But then the debrief is, so which of these problems were you more comfortable in? And almost everybody is more comfortable in the jigsaw puzzle. That's not everybody. And then the question I ask is, so tell me about a job in the real world that's like the jigsaw puzzle, where there's one right answer and there's a picture of it literally on the outside of the box. And why, and the answer is, well, I work at a factory. I work as a construction worker. But there's actually a lot of nuance in that if you dig in deep. I could build IKEA furniture. So at any rate, so we're here to help create, that's the way I look at it, these ambiguous situations where they're working together as teams. I'm just going to flip through some pictures, but I'll mention this. In our space, we have all these signs, right? It is all about permission. There is a no smoking sign on the outside of the building, but we have other ways of enforcing that. But it's like, yes, you can definitely hang out here. Yes, you can totally throw an event here. Yes, you can make stuff here. Yes, you can for sure sit here. It makes things a little chaotic at times, and we now have like resets. Yes, you can totally clean up after yourself. That's a sign that we've implemented. But anyway, it's about permission. It's about granting. It's about connecting people. And so sometimes there are things like this, like who doesn't need to make a small miniature chair out of shreds of cardboard, or quilt. We have a wall that every year becomes a mural made out of painter's tape. So literally, people are putting their thumbprints on our space. We have a maker space, but the emphasis is on hand tools, and the emphasis is on encouraging people who have not grown up, where they're in a suburban house where their dad had a wood shop in the garage, but to give people access and teach people. We also make an effort to set up our classrooms differently, every single class. Some of you have seen my space deck, and like with a reason. So this is a setup where we're going to talk about 2x2 matrices. This is a setup where we're going to talk about ambiguity. This is a setup where we're going to do a lecture, but there is nobody can sit in the back row because there isn't one. This is a setup called pair work. And so to try to shake up the form and with intent every time we do something. And this is just like a sketch of all of the different ways one might arrange a room for teaching. And then we do classes, we do projects. This is a human-centered design class that's working on a prompt with a sponsor called the Field Innovation Team to redesign the disaster experience for a marginalized community. To think about, we're exposed, California, other places, to a lot of disasters, but how do you redesign that experience for a particular person? And then we've had students do a lot of work in caring for caregivers in healthcare. I've had a whole thing about designing for the people on the perimeter of a situation. Everybody's focus is on the patient, but less focus is on the caregiver. And that's turned into really, really, really cool work that some of our students have done. And then we do a project, this is like June was sharing with us very much, with a local retirement center, redesigned the intergenerational communication experience. And these are just, again, back to Sandy's point about leaning in. I love some of these pictures because of the eye contact and the leaning in. In COVID, we did it over Zoom, and it didn't look as beautiful as this, but it actually had even more impact because people were starved for that connection. They're just like great visuals of what it looks like when you bring people together and get them to ask good questions of each other. And there are also call out this retirement community has an initiative called the Napier Initiative, and they award grants to students, and they also help to sponsor classes that are at the 5 Claremont Colleges, where there are seats for elders and seats for students. And we're working towards like creating some teams where they will work on projects together. Okay. That's the Hive. That was Act 2. Any questions, thoughts? Okay. People don't actually like an intermission when you go to the play. I mean, sometimes you do because you go to the bar. Yeah.
I guess my question was, a lot of the photos when you have the older adults, especially, is that out in the community or is that at your center?
That's out in the community. That's
Do you ever invite those folks in to come into your space? I mean, this just is a playful and joyful space. So I'm curious, like, do you?
We do. Okay. When we do the presentations for this class, we invite them in to participate in the presentations. And yes, we do have them there.
We're not doing some of those activities. I mean, I don't know, something about, I don't know, I teach in a studio environment and our desks very different. So whenever I go into like design thinking centers, I'm always like, oh, it's so much more flexible and creative there, as opposed to sitting in our spaces with like walls. And I don't know, I feel like the community members get so much out of just doing some of those images.
Yeah, we do. The answer is we do. We have to restart some of those things because of the pandemic and health concerns. But prior to that, we had a weaving workshop, and it was actually led by some folks from Pilgrim Place, they brought in a hand loom, and we did that together. These pictures are sort of important to do it in their environment for us because I want our students to walk across town. It's a 8-minute walk. I realize there's a border. And that means that they don't cross to walk into this community that's there, but it goes both ways. So, yeah.
I just love that question, and that's exactly what we've been, how do we make these borders more permeable and do both and? So realizing that over this past year, last class, like we were probably in this space less than 50% of the time. We were doing walking tours, but right here and going there, and how to continue to cross those spaces and be together in different parts of the community. And my question was also about what projects have you been doing that are still ongoing? Like, how deep are they, or short term? Like, are they cycling over, or are they sustaining across years?
That is a good transition into Act 3 of my little drama, but some of the healthcare things have sustained with particular students. So we did a project for the Brain Tumor Network, which is like really, it's a organization that helps people who are suffering from brain tumors find resources outside of their community that for clinical trials, but also turns out provides a ton of support for caregivers and really hard space, right? And so I was like, I don't know if I want undergrads to be working in this space, but they were invested in it, and I sat in on some really powerful interviews with like a father whose daughter was dying. That then the students wanted to do more. So they found, two students did their senior thesis and they found by themselves the head of neuro-oncology at University of California, San Francisco Medical Center. And this was actually a positive thing. This is during the COVID time, and they were able to get into her office via Zoom regularly and have meetings, right? They never would have done it. They would have thought they had to drive to San Francisco and sit out there, and then there would have an emergency. So they connected with her and actually helped with a program they had started called the Honor Project, which was helping with the emotional issues that medical staff who work in neuro-oncology have but don't like admit often. Or they're like, I'm built for this, I can handle it. Nobody's built for losing 95% of their patients. But anyway, so that carried on several years, and students continued it. But we are trying to find projects that we can sustain. And let's talk about that. Okay, so everything we do at the Hive is interdisciplinary, or at least we try. I should have mentioned a little more. The Claremont Colleges are these 5 small liberal arts colleges: Pomona College, Harvey Mudd College, Scripps College, Pitzer College, and Claremont McKenna, that all have their own presidents, their own admissions staff, their own culture that is quite unique, and their own architecture is quite unique. When you do a walking tour, you're like, I know exactly which college I'm in, and different emphasis. But we're able to create classes that have that always have students from all 5 colleges with as many different majors as possible. So they're working on a project like redesigning the disaster experience, and we'll have 5 students from 5 colleges with 5 different majors working on that together by design, and selecting and pulling people. And that doesn't mean the economics student and the engineering student and the philosophy student all fall into predictable patterns, but they do fall into different patterns, and they do have different skills, and they do notice other things. So we're always trying to do our problem solving with that lens on it. And as you saw, we're trying to do things that are intergenerational, and that's the theme of this talk. And that's what is a generation? That's a question, right? That's a social construct. But now we're trying to think about intercultural communications or design project, and trying to cross, it was a great talk yesterday at MAPS, but trying to cross a border that is very near us in California, right? Specifically Mexico. So we thought, how do we do something bigger, and how do we design across the border? And recognize that we share, especially in Southern California, we share climate issues, health issues, human issues, migration issues, and very little actually happens academically with people in Mexico. Very, very rarely do students study abroad in Mexico. They do go to South America, they do go to all over Europe, they do go to Asia. So we conceived of a program that would involve a school in Mexico, the Hive, start a mental space or perhaps a healthcare space in 2 countries, and then a summer go live. So we conceived of that last summer as a reaction to the idea of how we would go deeper, and then put this question together. How might we great cross-border, cross-cultural collaboration rooted in the values of equity and partnership. Like just as a how might we prompt? Asha, Srikantai, and I went in October to Monterrey, Mexico. We had a student who was a Scripps student who we knew had just graduated and was there and invited us to come visit. And her family was very connected with two of the prominent universities there, Universidad de Monterrey and El Tec de Monterrey. And we got tours of both places. We also had a connection through, interestingly, through the sponsor of the Hive, who's had a business school friend there. We decided UDEM had a mindset, a really incredible design program, a mindset that we were interested in. And so October we visited. This past January we launched a class where we have 12 students from Claremont and 12 students in Monterrey working in parallel, taking a class that's scheduled at mostly the same time. So they're communicating over Zoom, and they're working on a project around urban agriculture. And working with partners in both countries around urban agriculture. Our students, this is a picture of us like walking into the campus, which has some amazing architecture. Our students and our faculty, including me, went to Monterrey in March, spring break. It's like 2 weeks ago. And it was amazing connection that happened. And their students are coming to Claremont in April, and they were hoping at least a summer project. These are just some pictures. This is more interesting. We're looking at urban gardens in Mexico, and you can't tell which students are the U.S. students and which are the students from Monterrey, but they're learning things about the questions that are happening, and they're sharing their design insights in Mexico and kind of leaning into what they've learned, what's going on in their design process, and basically doing a review of the work. And comparing notes, you can see this Venn diagram has UDEM and the Hive. What's different, what's the same? So who doesn't love a good Venn diagram? But the question for all of them was, what did you notice from the outsides of that Venn diagram? What did you notice? What's different than if you had just looked at your own circle in your own boundary, in your own border, and what do you notice? And that's kind of, and what did you notice that others are noticing? And so the idea is to get them to share those insights, share those connections, and particularly notice the ones that others notice. So to be sure, the students in Mexico are also, fortunate, privileged. They're going to this school. They're not all. Many of them are on scholarships. Some of ours are. But what we think is exciting here is this parallel that there's 12 students, 2 different environments, and working on a common problem. And this is like an insight from one of the presentations of one of our students, who's like, oh, I noticed some things about our problem in Southern California by what we saw and what the students in Monterrey, Mexico noticed. So this brings me back just about on time to the question we started with. What are your borders? Like, and how might you help students, yourselves, your colleagues cross those borders? There's expert and amateur. That's a little bit of how I look at what I was doing when I was at Fidelity. There's comfort and creativity. That's actually a thing in the Hive that we really stress as an intentional overlap, right? You can be creative and comfortable. Poets and engineers, there are lots of disciplines. There's young and old. That should have some overlap, right? Because there aren't necessarily generations. And we're now thinking about this U.S.-Mexico one, but we're loaded with borders. So yeah, that's what I've got. I guess we have 1 minute for questions.
I agree. We failed to cue this well yesterday, so I wanted to make sure we did today. If you're in this room, on your table, you'll see a QR code to give us feedback, right? What did you learn? What's your takeaways? What's your insights? And as we do that, on those in Zoom, you're also going to
are there any questions online?
Also give us feedback, but then we wanted to open it up to questions and conversation for a couple of minutes as well. And so Are there any questions in Zoom at the moment that we might have missed?
Not yet.
Okay. So yes, in the room, questions, conversation, key takeaways, observations, experiments you want to try.
I have a question. I want setups that you shared for like learning and how different setups, are aimed for different purposes. I was wondering if you can share with us like what initiated that. Like, what is there something that you noticed that was like, okay, let's do this? And then the second question is, do you have any feedback collected from like students or the people who use the space about what extent it served that purpose?
Yeah, so what instigated that is, again, who I am and what I do is I feel like I like to shake things up a little bit, and I walk into a lot of classrooms. This is not one of them. A lot of classrooms where the chairs are bolted to the floor, right? And there's a podium, right? And it's one directional. So part of it was just my desire to shake that. And also work I had done at Fidelity in my prior life in shaking up what is an office. And some of this is inspired by Scott Dourley and Scott Widoff, who were at the D School, and their book Make Space. So total props to them. And they had consulted with us on how to, we're in an old library building, a quirky old building with weird high ceilings and little things, how we might leverage that space. And then it was just this also notion that we all settle into in this cognitive science that says, well, if you take two groups and they're trying to learn the same thing, and one group sits learn vocabulary in a foreign language, and one group sits in one room for 3 hours and studies, another group just moves to 3 different rooms, and at each hour, the group that moves learns more, right? And there's also something we all know, didn't happen today, but I know there was some temptation that we go to our comfort spot. We go to sit in the same spot in the classroom. So wherever we sat that first class, fourth seat in the 3rd row, that's our spot. And then everybody around us, if anybody ever sits in that spot in my class, they're in trouble. So we just recognizing that, shake it up. And so what happens is, what happens is students report back to data that they know more people in this class than they do in any of their others. They know everybody's name and they know something about them, right? And that's like a super important part of it. And so that's like data we can actually report on. And we think they're more awake and they learn more because they're less comfortable, right? And so that's also that comfort and learning question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I can share with you, we made a deck of cards with 52 ways to set up a classroom. So you need to have.
I want that, please.
Yeah. I think I have one in my bag I could show afterwards. Okay, now I think we're out of time. Unless there's any other burning questions.
Let's say thank you again. Thank you so much. We have about 10 minutes. Please get up if you need to use the restroom. It's right out